Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I am Tracy Cram Perkins, and our show today is Dementia Home Care. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at USA Global TV and Radio. I am a four-time dementia caregiving survivor and the author of Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. And joining me today, and I'm so excited about this, is the wonderful Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, founder, president, and chief listening officer here at USA Global TV. Welcome, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you so much, Tracy. It's so good to be here.
I am so excited to have you on the show with me today.
I'm excited as well. I'm not used to being on the other side of the microphone.
Well, if it's all right if I explain a little bit about our background here, Dr. Jacalyn first invited me onto the show and then gave me this show, and oh my gosh, she has coached me all the way through this. This has been so wonderful. She is also a fellow dementia caregiving survivor, and so today we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Tracy. And by the way, I have your book here, which absolutely has been a savior for me and so many people. I actually just lent it to a friend of mine who's going through a similar situation, and we know how upsetting it can be. Actually, my mom, I actually took her to the hospital. Saturday would be a year. And so a lot of emotions coming up. But there are so many people that I've been in contact with, and I've met recently, that are going through a situation where someone they love has dementia. And it's a tough road.
Okay, so you and I have bonded over this because it is something that is, as you said, it's a very tough road. It's very difficult to know where to turn. Now that you have actually lived through this, how is this helping you help other people?
That's such a good question, Tracy. Thank you for asking that. I think the one thing that comes to mind right away is that I made mistakes, and there were things I didn't know, and there were signs that I didn't see that obviously, before we knew that she had dementia. And I think when I'm hearing some of my friends and what they're going through, I'm listening and waiting for them to ask, is there, what was your experience like? And they do ask. And I just share with them that I was very angry at times. I was very confused and frustrated. And now, because of reading your book and because of this show that you're doing and all the people that you've brought here, I have a different perspective on it. So I would say that my perspective has changed greatly.
So I understand that you now feel like you're going to be doing some advocacy for Alzheimer's people. So can you tell us about that a little bit?
Absolutely. This is kind of interesting, I think, because I was working on a commercial for you because you did a presentation at our reunion show and it was so well received. I thought we really need to get this. So we're running it all the time. And I went over to the Alzheimer's website to get their phone number and to get their web address that I could copy and paste onto the sponsorship. And I saw they were having a walk coming up in November in Boca Raton, Florida. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is meant to be. I'm supposed to do this walk. So I immediately signed up and I named the team Joyce's Journey after my mother. And then they called from the Alzheimer's Association the next day. And I'm going to be looking to do as much as I can to help out.
That is so cool. I just love that. I mean, seriously, it's so amazing, the journey that you personally have gone through. I mean, who would you have ever thought that this would happen?
No, not in a million years. And in the video that you have, which unfortunately we can't play right now, but you have a picture, an image of a brain, and a brain that has holes in it on one side, and dementia brain. And when I think back to how many people I've known who had memory issues, and then it seemed to get worse and worse, and we really didn't understand what was going on. I feel like now, because of what you've done, really, because you're the champion in this area, that you've given people hope and inspiration, and you've given people tools so that they can understand this is what's going on, and here are some things that you can do about it. So I never thought that I would be on this journey.
I think most people don't expect to be on the journey. You think about when you first started, you were talking about you didn't understand what was going on with your mom or why she was behaving the way she was. And or even the times when, let's say, you were on the air producing another show and your mom would do something or wander off, or those things happen. I mean, do you mind talking about some of that, because people don't understand?
Yeah, no, no, thanks for asking. Yeah, I remember specifically I was broadcasting, and I always have my phone nearby, but it's on silent, and I could see somebody was texting me, and it was a neighbor to let me know that my mother was walking like 5 miles from where we lived, and she was close to getting to 95, I-95.
Oof.
So I had to go and search for her, and even though we had one of those, what are they called? The trackers.
Yeah, GPS trackers. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, GPS. I couldn't find her. And meanwhile, it was probably 90 degrees outside. And, for an 83-year-old person to be walking in that kind of heat, and they have dementia, and it was really frightening. And so that was the furthest away she had gone. But just knowing that I was working and I couldn't have my eye on her 24/7, it's really upsetting.
Did you change anything in your house after that? I mean, did you like make the doors chime or do anything like that, or how did you deal with it?
Well, I did put a sign on the door, "Do not leave." Do not leave. And I did sit down and speak with her, and she realized that she was afraid because she knew she was lost and she didn't know how to get back. So she said that, she wasn't going to go far anymore. And so finally I said, "Well, I'll walk with you." So then I started taking walks with her instead of her going by herself.
So as you guys are going through the journey, so you actually drove down with her from New Jersey to Florida.
Yes.
How did that trip go?
Well, in the very beginning, she would repeat herself constantly. "It's a beautiful day out, isn't it? It's a beautiful day. It's a good day for a drive. I'm glad it's not raining." And so I had to literally do some deep breathing and just calm myself down, because, it's already stressful when you're driving. And then she was constantly looking for her purse. "Where's my purse? Where's my purse?" And so I finally just took the purse and, put it on her lap so that she had it. But she was really good. I mean, it's a long drive. She was really good about it. And then we got a flat tire.
Oof.
And that was a whole other story, because we were in the middle of North Carolina, and we weren't really near any place, and there was no one who could help us. But by the grace of God, we ended up getting a repair. And she was good about that too, but she seemed to be very nervous all the time, and which made me sad.
That's completely understandable because it's so outside of her routine. Uh,
Yes.
but it sounds like you championed through it really well, considering all the things that happened.
Well, Tracy, the funny thing is, on the drive up, we also got a flat tire. So it was on the up and the back, we got a flat tire. And like, that's never happened before. And she had to go through all of that. And at one point, I found a Walmart that actually did tire repairs. And so my mom and I had to go in and wait while they were doing it. And it was really overwhelming for her because it's so big in there. There's so much space and noise and light. And you can just see how the atmosphere, the environment was affecting her.
Oh yeah, I don't think people understand. Small spaces feel safe for people with dementia, and so throwing somebody into that, I can see why she would melt down because she would be able to process all the sounds. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's for the people in the audience that don't know this, with dementia also comes tinnitus, and it's like tinnitus on steroids. So the buzzing in the ears, and it makes it harder to process some sounds and filter out background noise that you and I take for granted because we've tuned it out. Somebody with dementia cannot filter that sound out anymore. And it may seem like they're not answering you the right way, or it may take them 5 minutes before they process it and answer the question. But it takes them a while just because they can't handle that. So you actually, the fact that you were able to take care of her and she didn't completely melt down in the Walmart is really impressive.
There was so much stress on those 2 drives, I can't even tell you because I don't wanna let her out of my sight, right?
Exactly. Hmm.
And at the same time, I have to get the car repaired, and so it was a lot, and the fact that it happened again, I thought, "Oh my gosh, we're not doing this again," and of course, we didn't do it again.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, no, I completely understand that because it is so much for one person to manage, and it is so stressful, and you don't have an outlet or a safety net while you're doing that. There's no backup. I
Very
mean,
true.
look at what you did with just having to do the first flat tire. I mean, there was no safety net there for you. You had
No.
nobody you could call. You're in a strange state where you don't know anybody, and this, yeah. I I'm just very I applaud you for that because that is really challenging. I don't think people understand the depth that you have to go through to take care of somebody with dementia.
It's very true, and to your point, I still had to work through the whole
Mhm.
thing, and we had a camera that was in her room so that we could see what she was doing. So my sister was downstairs and I was up here, and we were both watching, and it's hard because I actually watched her die while I was doing one of the shows.
I did not know that. I am so
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you.
Yeah, that's I can't imagine what that must have felt like for you having to hold it together on the show while that was happening.
Well, the funny thing about it is that I had a sense it was gonna happen during this. It was during the corner bookstore, and I had just said to the people on the show, because I wasn't on the show, I was producing it, that please don't run over, please. And for whatever reason, I guess it just meant to be, the show ran over by at least, I think, 12 minutes.
Oh, no.
And so I wanted to just end it, but I couldn't. And so it's a memory I'll always have, unfortunately.
Well, I hope at some point you will be able to make peace with that, because even though you weren't physically in the room with her, you were still there with her.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So, but yeah, and then let's talk about grief because that's another big component that people don't understand. Um,
yes.
I mean, because grief, for those of you that have never gone through this process yet, uh, never goes away. Grief is also a sign of healing. So don't avoid grieving. And it always helps to have a support group to help guide you through it so that you understand that you're not crazy and that you're not going through this by yourself, but that other people go through this too. And eventually you just learn to live with grief. But when you first lose somebody, like you're just talking about, the 1 year anniversary is probably the hardest thing to get through after somebody dies. And so, do you have a strategy for how you're going to get through that day?
Well, I don't have a strategy. It's actually August 24th. And so today I'm in the house in New Jersey where she actually died. And I don't go into that room. Other people have stayed in the room like it's no big deal, but I just can't go in there. So I'll be back in Florida. So I think that might make it a little different because I won't actually be here having those. So I think I'm just going to do something to celebrate her.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think
Ex-
that's what I'll do. Something she liked to go for walks and play tennis. Actually, the funny thing is, Wimbledon was just on. I don't know if you watched it or not, the tennis match, but my
No,
mom
I didn't
was
watch.
a huge tennis fan, huge. And so she watched all the tennis matches, and we don't get the channel, the ESPN channel here. And for whatever reason, like I just wanted to watch the final in center court on Sunday in honor of her. And all of a sudden, I was able to get ESPN, even though we don't have a subscription. I watched the final,
Oh,
so I'll
wow.
do something tennis related or walking related to honor her.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, uh, when my dad died, they actually had to kick us out of the room and not allow us to be there because every time we would go in and spend the time with him in the last 24 hours of his life, he would come back. And then when we would leave, he would go back onto the dying journey, and then we would come back. and then his oxygen level would go back up. And he didn't want to leave with us, and he didn't want us to be in the room with him when he passed. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically what was happening, and we didn't realize that at first until one of the counselors was explaining what was going on, and she said, "Say your goodbyes now. Do not come back." And he was gone 2 hours later.
Wow.
So it was just not understanding the dying process, because for everyone, obviously death is very personal, and sitting there, a lot of us have never experienced death firsthand, where we've watched someone pass in front of us, kind of like what you did with your mom on watching it via video, which is, I can't imagine how hard that was for you. But being in there, I had to teach my cousins how to say goodbye, because they didn't even know how to say goodbye to someone. They didn't know the importance of touch. They didn't have any understanding of anything about death or connecting with the person who was dying, about talking to them, understanding that they can still hear you all the way up to the end. So
Mm.
there's a lot of things that go into it that people just don't understand. But also, punishing yourself for not being there for the last minute is is a waste of energy, but it's hard to forgive yourself for that too. I mean, there's so many emotions mixed up in it. It's more the strength of the relationship that you had in the lifetime than it is that final moment.
True. Very true.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I don't think people typically talk about is when you watch someone in the decline, if they're dying over 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it is, you're not prepared. At least we weren't prepared for what actually happens to the body.
Yeah.
And it's something that you don't forget. I mean, I don't ever remember reading, hey, expect this, and this to happen. But the day that she died, what was so interesting, it was a Thursday, which is one of our busiest days here for production. So before I came up here to produce, she was 2 floors down. I climbed onto her bed because she had the rails, and I just played with her hair and touched her face, and I sang to her. And
Oh, that's so cool.
but what's interesting is that you don't think you'll have the strength to do it. Like you don't even know how you could possibly do it without crying, but
Hmm.
somehow I did it. It's amazing. And the other thing is, and I'd love to have your thoughts on this because we've lost other people since then, and I wonder, my mom died of cancer, but she had the dementia, so she didn't know she was sick. She thought she had a cold. So is knowing that you're dying is versus not knowing because you keep forgetting. I'm not sure which is better.
I would say if you're forgetting, don't remind them. Just take that time and spend it with them, because you personally already know that it's coming to an end and they're going to be released from an awful disease. We don't need to keep putting them back into the grief of going, oh my God, I've got cancer. I mean, because they can feel the body shutting down. And if she just thinks she has a cold, then let her think she has a cold. Because,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and you still get to say goodbye. I mean, it's because I'm not God. I can't put a stopper in death. I mean, but I can be there and support those that need the support. And
Very true. Very
but
true.
everyone, it's very different for everyone. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say the other thing is that we did hospice at home. So my sister and I actually took care of her, which was, every state has different rules. So in New Jersey, it's basically once you agree to go with hospice care, there's nothing that's going to be done to try to save the person's life
Hmm.
as opposed to palliative care. At least that's my understanding. And that's a tough road. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that the person's going to die. And at some point, you're even like, please, God, let the suffering stop. I mean, how much
Hmm.
longer can this go on? And then when they actually die, you knew they were going to die, right? You knew they were suffering. But there's something that happens when they're actually dead. And you're like, it's painful.
Hmm. Oh, I have to agree. For each one of my family members, it was very different, actually. Um, but with my aunt, which was the last person that I was with, she made me promise her that I would not be in the room when she passed. So again, she's my dad's brother or sister, excuse me, and so something about that side of the family did not want us to be in the room when she actually passed. But I was there for when she was calling for help, because all she could do was say help, help, help. I would touch her hand and ask her if I could help. She goes, "No, you can't help," and then it would repeat. And it
Mhm.
was a very interesting experience. The only part that I really regret, and I Sometimes you have a prescient feeling where you experience something and you know that that's going to happen to you again later in life or to somebody else later in life in front of you. Um, she had the Shane Stokes breathing, and if you don't know what that is, that's when you have that gurgly
Mm.
breathing, and it sounds like, and they kind of stop, and then all of a sudden they gasp and they start again. So she was doing that. They have a medication that can lessen that, and the hospice nurse prescribed it for her, but she was in a care facility, and the nurse technician that was there taking care of her did not believe it helped, and so she would refuse to administer it.
Oh,
And no amount of begging or pleading would allow us her would convince her to do that. And she kept telling us it won't help, it won't help, it won't help. So for 24 hours, she was doing this breathing, and and then obviously it stopped. But and
yeah.
she just said it. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's painful. That's really,
It, well,
it's,
yeah, yeah, but
my
it's
mom had that too. That's hard to forget,
hmm
that sound. So, and I wonder what the person, when they're going through that, if they're aware of it or they're in so much pain.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's one we're not going to know. But
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you something because you've been on an incredible journey since you wrote your book. Did you expect it to take off the way that it has?
Okay, I'll be honest. I hoped it would take off the way that it has. I had no expectations because I did not know. I just,
But you wanted it to happen and you put it out there.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I guess they call it manifesting. I told myself I was going to help 1.8 million people. We're not close to that even yet, but I mean, we've helped over 14,000 so far, plus the book travels. So more than 14,000 people have obviously read it, and I get some of the most amazing emails from people or testimonials that they send to me on Facebook. That just I sit behind the scenes and weep. Okay, if you tell me that story, I'm gonna cry. It's just
Oh, that's fabulous. How did you come to pick the number 1.8 million?
It just came to me. It's kind of like, lightning in a bottle. I have no idea. It just hit me. It said, maybe it was that my angel's talking to me. I have no idea. But the number 1.8 just came into my head and said that's what you will do in your lifetime. So, and if I actually hit that number, then and I'm still alive, I will continue.
I think you definitely.
Thank you.
One of the things that I'd like to just have you share with our audience is what are some of the signs? Because, we all have memory issues. You walk into a room, why did I come in here? What was I doing here? When is it more than that?
Oh, when you start noticing that you can't do your normal activities of daily living, so let's say that you're missing paying bills. You think you paid them, you can't pay them. Or you start getting if you were a very neat person and suddenly piles are developing everywhere and it looks like hoarding and it becomes hoarding, it's because you're feeling out of control and that's your way of handling it. So that's one thing. So not paying bills, not being able to do, if you're still working, not being able to do your normal function at work that you used to be able to do with ease. So if you can't do that anymore, getting lost in places where you've been driving to for years is another really big sign that, okay, if you're starting to get lost and you don't recognize street signs, now that doesn't mean that you went back to your old hometown and they've torn down all the buildings you used to know and they built high rises. Okay, that's a different story. I'm talking about that you drive this road like every week and then you go down it one day and it doesn't look familiar. That is a big sign. Or if you start making poor choices while you are driving and then blame it on everybody else. And you may not recognize that it's you. Like my father, which this is before I knew what was going on, uh, my husband and I had been paying for a storage unit for my parents because they had hit the insurance cap and could no longer afford to pay for anything. So we paid for their storage, thinking we were going to get, this is before we knew we could get them back on their feet or not. And so we paid for the storage unit for 2 years and finally realized, okay, this is not going to work. So my dad and I went down there and we started working on either throwing away the stuff that was broken or selling the stuff to help pay for their medications and pay for their health care, and the stuff they had wasn't really worth that much. but at least something to help because they had no money. They had lost all of their entire life savings to medical because of the insurance cap at the time.
Mm.
So my mom had hit the 2.5 million and they were done. And they lost their home, they lost all their life savings, all their stock investments, everything was gone to pay for her cancer treatment. So it was a very, very difficult road for them. Well, my dad went down one day and we took his car from his apartment to the storage unit because his car was larger than mine. I drove a little tiny Geo at the time. Um, we're leaving and we pull out onto a street that's 35. He pulls in front of everyone at 5 miles an hour and then goes up to 17. And there's cars behind him honking. And I'm asking him, why is he doing that? And this is before I understood covering. He goes, because I am teaching them how to behave responsibly on the road.
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
wow, that's the best cover. Now, in retrospect, that was the best cover I ever heard. So what I
What
did is
was your response?
I told him, I go, well, look, there's McDonald's up there. Do you want to get a shake before we go home? And so he turned into McDonald's and let all the cars pass because I knew I wasn't going to win the argument.
Right,
It's like,
right, of
just,
course.
and I didn't. I just thought, okay, I'll just give him something to eat. He'll be very happy, and then we'll go. And we took a different road home.
Everybody was very appreciative of that.
I'm sure, but I didn't. I did not understand that part. And the after my mom died, he was living on his own. And again, people cover. It's part of the disease. They just rise to the occasion or they make it. I mean, we all cover when we're embarrassed about something. So it's not unusual. But um, he got in a car accident and he sheared off his passenger side uh, rear view mirror or mirror,
Mhm.
excuse me, because he didn't yield appropriately in a roundabout.
Ah,
And so he ended up scraping off somebody's car. The woman that he hit, her car, got zero damage. Did nothing to her car because her car was an old tank. So she just let him go. And we came over to visit him, and his car was parked in front of his apartment. And I asked my dad, I'm going, what happened to your window? And then he made this story up about how somebody was careening down the road, swerved, and sheared off the thing. Okay, so I am now with him another time. We've gotten it repaired. I am with him another time, and the same thing happens in the same roundabout with the same woman. And she told me now what the story was. And I apologized. I said, do you want me to pay for any damage? And she goes, there's no damage. But you might want to talk to me about not driving the car anymore. And that's when we took the car away. But
what are the odds of that?
Uh, well, I think again, the I don't know what it was, but somebody was watching over us, got us to the right place at the right time, and prevented him from killing someone or getting
Right.
into an accident where he was killed. So, and perhaps, and I don't know this, but perhaps maybe she had another family member somewhere that had the same problems, and she was experienced and understood. I really don't know, but I know I was so upset about the whole thing. It was like it was really hard for me to keep my composure.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm glad that you brought that up about the driving because my mother also had 2 car accidents. She pride herself on her driving. She loved to drive, and she totaled 2 cars. And that was a sign back then. I should have seen it then, but taking the car keys away from someone, that's another tough call. What do you recommend for that?
My first thing is well, okay, if you're talking to a man, it's going to be different than talking to a woman. Okay, if you're talking to a man, uh, the Alzheimer's Association has a really good video series about how to approach somebody with the driving issue, and so I would look that up first, so you kind of have an idea of how to approach it. But you have to deal with their pride in this instance, and so you cannot accuse them of anything, but you can say that you notice there's an issue, or maybe you don't notice an issue. Maybe you don't say that exactly, but say that we have to talk about the time when what circumstances would you be willing to stop driving? Some people will self-select to stop driving because they recognize that they have an issue. Others will not. Then you can say the insurance company, if they've had a fender bender, you can use the insurance company because no one will be hurt by this and say, the insurance has been canceled. You are no longer allowed to drive. And then you can also make sure that you get them down to the DMV and get them changed from an active driver's license to a state issued ID. Now they won't remember that they can't drive. So then the next step is, depending on the model of car, you can make it non-functional when they are driving it by if it's a car after the year 2000, you can remove the fuel pump fuse, and that will tell the computer in the car that there's no gas, but the tank will still show full. So then the car won't start, and then you'll say, "Oh, we'll have to get that taken to the shop." Okay, but then the other thing is, if it's an older car, scatter the keys. Go to a junkyard, get keys that match the make and model of the car you have that do not work in your car, and then take that and scatter it around the house. Then they're going to get exercise, and then they're going to finally give up after they've done it 5 or 6 times and they can't get the car to drive. And then you hold on to the correct keys. So there's a few things you can do. You can ask your doctor to let them know that they can't drive anymore. However, understand that some physicians find that so stressful that it gives them anxiety to do that. So if your physician doesn't want to do that, definitely play the insurance card, because they're human too, the physicians, and they just some of them just can't handle that type of confrontation, or saying something like that. So, and especially since we've ended the pandemic, there's a lot of stress among physicians. So just something to keep in mind.
Excellent tips. Thank you for that. What are some other tips that you can give to people for keeping their loved ones safe when they're in the house?
So there's lots of things that you can do inside the house depending on what you're trying to do. So remove trip hazards. So if you've got area rugs, if you don't have them taped down to the floor with carpet tape, then remove them, because it's really easy, especially if they get to the point where they are shuffling their feet. The reason they're shuffling their feet is because they can no longer feel the floor under their feet. So they have to do something to maintain contact. So you want to make sure that you don't have something they can trip over. Make sure there's no extension cords out in walking areas, and make sure there's enough area space around furniture. Now, for things that are related to sundowning, make sure that you have window shades, because one of the things is glare in the morning and in the afternoon, especially if you have like shiny floors, can cause hallucinations. So you want to have the shades drawn so that they do not have that issue. But you also want to make sure that you're able to turn the light up. So if you have your light on a dimmer switch, you can turn it up, especially in the afternoon. It will act like the sunlight on the person with dementia's brain, and it will give them more dopamine. They won't get stressed and make weird behaviors because they don't understand what's going on around them. It just makes them easier to deal with, and you don't have the awful behaviors that you can experience with somebody who's sundowning. It's not 100% guaranteed. It's different with every single person, but you can try and mix and match. Also, be mindful of black, because black is perceived as a whole by somebody with dementia. So if you've got a black doormat, or if you've got black furniture or black mats in the bathroom, that might be why they are hesitant to use the bathroom or to bathe. That could be one of the issues. So you want to keep away from black, because it does look like a hole, unless you are worried about them wandering off while you are at home working. And you can put a black mat on the inside of all the exit doors. They will perceive the hole. No one wants to fall in the hole. They'll turn around and go find another door to try and get out of.
Thank you, Tracy. And something else I'd love to have you touch on is when your loved one with dementia starts saying that they feel things are crawling on them, they feel like they have bugs or something. Have you heard of this?
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually kind of common. The bugs are a big deal. Realize that they really are feeling it. Because of the holes in their brain and how they're perceiving it, treat it like the bugs are there. Ask them, tell them you can be honest. Tell them you can't see the bugs, that you know that you can feel them, and that you need their help to find the bugs to take care of it. So if they're feeling that, so you can help wipe off the bugs, you can give them something to help wipe off the bugs, or you can also change them to a different room. Earlier, Dr. Jacalyn, you had mentioned that about you walk into a room and you forget why you walked in there. The same thing happens with the dementia brain. If you change scenes, kind of like a jump scene in a movie, it can change behavior. So walk them to a different room so that you can take care of the bugs, and then they get the emotional needs met. They understand that you are understanding them, that you love them and that you care for them, and that you are going to support them because they are afraid. And fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real. And realize that this false evidence is very real to them and they're going through every emotion they would as if they're being attacked by bugs.
Thank you, Tracy. So we shouldn't say there aren't any bugs. What are you, crazy?
Exactly. You don't want to do that. You want to step into their reality.
Yeah, fantastic. So many great tips that you've been sharing. Is there going to be a second book? Is there anything that you didn't include in the first one? Or
Well, my publisher has authorized me to actually do an update to this book. I've started doing a little bit of research, but I haven't done that yet. I do plan on doing additional books. Uh, right now, it's going to be a few years before I have a second book out there, but I'm definitely going to do a revised version of the first book because I want to add some things in there about people that are neurodiverse, because it's a different ball of wax to deal with somebody who has dementia and autism, or or ADD or something else. And people don't necessarily know how to handle that, and there's not a lot of experts out there that know how to handle that. So it's something that needs to be added to make people aware, because there's a lot of neurodiversity around us, and or if somebody with Down syndrome, we've got people that are living so much longer. It used to be that somebody with Down syndrome would only last to the age of 30. Now we have them up into their 70s. So it's trying to find something to help them, because if they live that long, they will get dementia.
and I just was reading somewhere that I think it's one out of every three people is going to live to be over 100 if you were born in certain years. So you were born recently, I guess. So does that mean we're more likely to get dementia?
Well, yes and no. Um, it also depends on genetics, lifestyle choices, and the cleanliness of the food that we eat. If we're eating closer to the farm, shall we say, and eating whole grain foods. I mean, basically, if you're doing the Mediterranean diet as opposed to eating at McDonald's every day, you are less likely to develop dementia. If you are learning something new regularly, that gives you what they call cognitive resilience, and it staves off dementia. So if you can teach yourself another language through something like Duolingo, um, anything you can do to make your brain more resilient. Exercise is a huge component, because anything good for the heart is good for the brain, and it will help with your longevity.
And what about getting outside?
Outside is important. Sunshine's important. Vitamin D, but also avoiding sunburns is another thing, because you don't want to give yourself cancer.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm always wearing a huge hat and long sleeves and big glasses. And people are like, you don't have any color. I'm like, I know, I don't want any sun. So it's good to be out there, but I don't want to have to worry about skin cancer
Mhm.
for sure. Wow. I thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on with me. I would just love that you're here.
I just love watching the growth and all that you've accomplished from sharing your stories of what you've gone through with family members and really putting dementia in the spotlight, because I think it's something that people have been embarrassed about, didn't want to talk about. And now you've put a light on it to give people hope and inspiration, say, okay, this is what it is. How do we deal with it? How do we support our loved one? And how do we take care of ourselves?
Eh, Thank you. You've stated that so eloquently, because we need to normalize it, kind of like we've normalized cancer, where cancer used to be a stigma and no one would talk about it. If you bring it out into the open, it makes it easier to deal with, also easier to prevent and get the right information out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Tracy, it's your show, but we've come to the end for today. So I'm going to just say thank you for having me and let you close out the show. Oh, it looks like Tracy's frozen for the moment.
Oh,
So are
am
you
I back?
frozen? Are you back?
Am I back?
No, there you are. Now you're back.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, thank you, Dr. Jacalyn, for joining me.
Thank you.
And next month we're going to be having Sheila Warnock. Uh, I promised you last time that she was coming. Well, she really will be coming this time. She is the co-author of Share the Care: How to Organize a group to care for someone who is seriously ill, which is published by Simon and Schuster. Anyway, we will see her next month back here on USA Global TV. In the meantime, you can go over to our YouTube channel at USA Global TV and Radio and look for Dementia Home Care Playlist, where you will find all of our past episodes. Thank you to the wonderful Dr. Jacalyn for all of her work today in front of the scenes and behind the scenes for making this possible. See you next time.